Hi there. My name is Jessica Crow. I am the founder of Apogee and the host of Change Leader Insights. And today I have with me Theo D'Souza. Hello, Theo. Thank you for joining me on the show. Theo is a curious change leader who loves to talk about change. And that is what we are going to do today is talk about his journey into change management. He's got a background in business management and HR, how he got into this space, why he loves it, and also how getting into change management, this career, has actually helped him expand his world beyond the workplace. Theo, thanks again for joining me. I don't know if I mentioned he's in New Zealand, so it's the early morning for him, afternoon for me. So, really appreciate you making time to connect. And I'm just excited for our conversation today because so many listeners to this show, the Change Leader Insight show, they are in the change management world. They are interested in getting involved in change management. And funny enough, a lot of people I've interviewed that are in change management today, they sort of found their way there, right? So they realized something about themselves that led them on this path. And I'm guessing, well, maybe it's the same for you, but I look forward to hearing your story. And before we get going with that, though, tell us more about yourself. How you kind of, your background, your origin story, and then how you got into change management. Let's just go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, again, thank you so much for having me on here. And I will, call out that this is the first time I've done something like this. So it's obviously, thank you. It's exciting. It's
Yeah.
a bit nervy at the same time, but it's all in the positive light, right? So yeah, a bit about myself. I think, like you said, a lot of change professionals find themselves in this area either intentionally or unintentionally falling into it.
Hmm.
I worked in the space, or should I say, studied in science for a long time here in New Zealand, and then, as a lot of Kiwis do, across the ditch to Australia for a bit of experience and work. And that's what I did for about 4 or 5 years, working in cinema management.
Hmm.
I kind of knew that it wasn't my forever job. It was something for sort of that period of time. And that's when I really try to look for, okay, how can I kind of move out or, find what's next? And through studying my MBA in Australia, that's when I found the topic of change management within that course.
Okay.
And while I didn't, hop straight into it, it was kind of something new. I didn't even know what change management was. I never knew the terminology and that it existed. But I did that one unit, but still finished my MBA with an HR specialization, and
Hmm.
that's how I kind of transitioned into HR. And it wasn't really until I spent, a year or two in the space of HR, and I had a really good mentor, who's actually also from America, should I say.
Yeah.
She guided me through understanding that you need to kind of lay your foundations within HR a little bit before you specialize in whatever area you want.
Yeah.
And so that led me to kind of look at, the what else while kind of setting that foundation. And the
Yeah.
more I looked into change management, it stuck with me over those 2, 3 years while I was in HR. The more I kind of understood, okay, this is how I can, sort of transition out, do a bit of formal and informal training, just learn more and find an opportunity. And I was lucky enough when I was here back in New Zealand again a few years later to find an opportunity within a current organization. And ever since I transitioned from there, I've just never looked back.
That's wonderful. Well, I wonder too, when you were in HR, from the individuals that I've interviewed on this show and that I've worked with, oftentimes HR business partners, HR leaders are responsible for implementing change in the workplace because there is, for better or worse, it makes sense sometimes, but they're people focused. So they're going to know how to do change management. Whether or not you got formal training or had some
Yeah.
coursework in your MBA or graduate studies, but is that how it was for you? Were you dabbling a little bit in implementing change at scale and then that just continued your curiosity, or how did
Yeah,
that work?
that's actually a very good point you make. And yeah, 100% the experience that I went through. I was in a smaller organization working as a sole HR professional, and I had the
Mhm.
opportunity to do a couple of different changes. One of them, probably the one that kind of sticks with me now, is being able to implement an HRIS. Now, again, smaller organization.
It's a
So
big project though.
I will say, it was, you're right. It is a big project, but you always got to take it with the relative proportion of the kind of people you're impacting and
True.
those kind of things. And it was a good first opportunity for me as well, because in a smaller environment, potentially making mistakes may have a smaller opportunity cost as opposed to,
Right.
when you've got quite a large scale project. So it's quite good for me to dabble in.
Yeah.
The most interesting thing is I only figured out when I was in the space of change management a few years later that I was actually doing change
Right.
management related activities. I didn't even, yeah. So like it's that whole like hindsight and reflection. So when I was in the space doing that, I didn't think about all of the aspects around the people experience and those kind of things to the extent that you would when you
Mhm.
have the tools available to you in the practice of change. So I still remember now, like I focused quite heavily on the delivery and the comm side of it, but not really how the rest of the organization would be when it came to, okay, we're changing a system, your payroll will look different, those kind of things. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely you talk about, people in that HR space it may be forced on them sometimes and they don't realize that that's what they're expected to do per se.
Right, right. Yeah, that's true. Interestingly, when I went through change management training over a decade ago, I had the same aha moment looking back, being like, oh, I was doing change management. I just didn't have the guardrails or the
Yeah.
thinking rigor as you described, right? You were doing some of it, but then maybe not all of it, or just thinking about it in that packaging it up in that way. What training did you do, training online? Did you do in-person training to further your education in that space, or was it more of like an organic self-taught, which a lot of people who are in change
Yeah.
management don't have, any sort of certification. It is self-taught. So
Yeah.
where did you end up? Or what did
Yeah,
you do
that's
next?
yeah, really good question. And I think that everyone will have their own experience and everyone
Yeah.
will find their own way for what works for them. So for me, I kind of took a three kind of pronged approach. So because I've done a couple of formal qualifications through like my MBA and back when I was at uni for my science master's degree as well, I really liked structure learning. So I knew that a
Yeah.
component of how I could basically build up my skill set was I had to go through some sort of formal qualification. So I went through
Mhm.
ProSci, which a lot of people know is kind of one
Mhm.
of the areas that gives you kind of that structure. I did a couple of other courses here in New Zealand, but
Mhm.
an Australian company. So the Agile Change Management Institute,
Mhm.
they're brilliant in what they offer. Did their course as well, more so to understand the tools that can come out of it and how you can actually utilize
Mhm.
that in practice.
Mhm.
ProSci also has some great tools, but I think there's a difference in applying both of those sets of
Yeah.
tools and things like that. Mentorship for me is the second prong. It's
Yeah.
hugely important being able to learn from other people who have experienced it. When you don't have the experience yourself, it's hard to be able to organically get that experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely for me, I went through three or four mentors over the course of 3 years. Some were specialized, very heavily specialized in change delivery. Some were more at that
Mhm.
change leadership level, not necessarily in change, but they were at more of an exec level and they had that
Like a
exposure
decision
of,
maker.
yeah,
Yeah.
of decision making and how can your decisions impact the people in your organization. So I always will vouch for mentorship and finding
That's great.
the right mentors around the place. It doesn't have to. I always try to look outside of my organization as well,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to be that. It can be someone within your workplace. And my third one was through the informal learning. So just utilizing
Mhm.
spaces like LinkedIn, um,
Mhm.
or just other avenues where it's more just research based and just reading, listening to audiobooks, whatever it may be. And the combination of those three is what really created that structure for me to understand whether I'm on the right path
Yeah.
or how to, sort of change or adapt what I'm doing.
Oh, I love that. Well, and you also have a podcast. It's called the 3 Change remind me what it's called. Change
Yeah, so
Chat?
Jane Chat, yes, Jane Chat is
There
my
we go, yeah.
brand, yeah, and then 3 for 3 podcast is what I've been doing over the last probably only 6 or 7 months, and that's been a short form podcast, literally 3 questions in 3 minutes, and for me, that's really helped me get, straight to the point of what is the
Yeah.
topic, what are the 3 main questions I want to know, and then that's when people kind of engage with the post once it's done. And obviously, you've been on it as well, and
Yeah,
depending on
yeah.
when this gets released, maybe the post is out yet or not. But it was really great to just speak to people like yourself and really dig into the nitty gritty of very specific
Yeah.
components of whatever the topic may be.
Yeah, I'm sure that's been a great learning opportunity for you as well. Because I know through these conversations on my podcast, I get a lot out of the information and wisdom that, guests like yourself are sharing. So,
Yeah.
very cool. Well, let's pivot now because we had talked when we had, met previously about how getting into this space, into change management and having this as a career is really kind of helped you, or just, it's not just your career, right? Like, tell me about what this profession or getting into this space has done for you.
Yeah, it's a really great question. Sorry. So for me, when I was doing a lot of the other roles that I was in, I don't think I fully had that it factor, that sort of that passion or drive. And I didn't always feel like I was in the role that I was most comfortable in. And when I say
Mhm,
comfortable, I don't necessarily mean being complacent or, being comfortable that I don't need to grow or learn, but it was definitely
mhm,
that experience where I didn't feel like I could fully invest my time,
mm,
inside of work as well as kind of that outside of work learning to kind of grow myself completely. And so it was, yeah, I went through a couple of different career changes, and it wasn't until I found this profession of change management where I really could just let myself grow in whichever capacity it was. I felt passionate about doing the work I did with the people, but also, like you said, growing my LinkedIn presence, spending time outside
mhm.
of work and going, look, I actually want to actively do this. I want to do it
Yeah,
for the sake of learning. I want to do it for the sake of growing and networking with other people and just seeing what everyone else does. And it's really been such a positive change for me. And I can see that a lot of other change professionals are in that same mindset. Like yourself, I
yeah,
connect with people that I would normally never connect with, right? Being here in New
yeah,
Zealand, how could I know that Jessica from across the world
yeah.
is doing, for example, this podcast or works in this space. And I would never have found myself in that situation if it wasn't for me jumping into this role and being passionate about doing all of the ancillary stuff that kind of goes with it.
That I love that. That's so true too. I've met so many people from across the world because of this role, and I think we're all people, right? So, it's like there's like this willingness and openness to connect and chat and collaborate and share, stories and insights, which is so cool. And I love that that's happened for you. And I don't know if it's happening in other spaces, just because this is the space I play in, but I
Yeah.
do think there is something special about individuals who are, focused on the people aspects of organizational change and behavior and culture. And yeah, there's just a good vibe there. So I'm glad that you've been able to take that, and you're excited about it and you're running with it, and you're obviously helping people that you work with because you're focused on making sure that their change experience is the best it can be within the constraints, I'm sure, of whatever that change may be. But what else? If you have Do you have any advice? I mean, you've actually shared quite a bit of great advice if somebody's looking to get into this space or, stay in it, right? Like
Yeah.
mentorship, formal learning, informal learning. What advice would you give to somebody who is like thinking about maybe I do want to get into change management or leading change within an organization?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll always say, I'm no expert. This is only from my personal experience. Having made that transition myself, I think some of the key things to look out for is you're not ever going to start right from the bottom in the sense that you're
Mhm.
not starting from scratch. Whatever you've worked in, there's always going to be transferable skills. Change management
Yeah.
comes from all different, walks of life. So that's kind of the most important thing is going, okay, what is the closest role that I've done? What are those transferable skills that I can put forward into that change space and highlight those for when I'm going into, whatever that next role is that I may want to get into. The only other thing I would say, obviously I've talked about the informal, formal learning and the mentorship, but for me, like I said before, the networking aspect of it, and I don't
Yeah.
mean, networking just for the sake of getting, people's numbers or whatever it is, or like, gaining traction or trying to sell something like on LinkedIn or whatever it may be. It's for me, it was getting those true connections with people where
Yeah.
I got to sit down and just talk to them and understand, okay, what has been their journey? How can I take one or two things from their journey, apply it to my own experience, and then build that way forward? And more often than not, those natural networks and connections are what gets you to where you want to be. It may not be
Yeah.
a change manager role straight away, but as you grow and build those connections, that's when people go, okay, yes, I do remember, I've spoken to X and they mentioned that they wanted to
Mhm.
get into the space. Let us trial them in an adjacent role or a role that can transition into that. And I've heard, a few people have actually spoken to me about how they can transition away from their current roles because they've seen me do it. And that's kind of what I've talked to them about.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's not always going to be a straight journey, and that's the same for anything, right? Anytime you try to
Yeah.
change your career, people always look at your past experience and go, "Why are you trying to go into X when you've always been doing Y?" But it's how you kind of highlight what you're passionate about going into that next role and what are the things you've done to help you get there. And that networking and the informal and formal structured learning, the mentorship, all of that is what can help you highlight where you are going to next and how you're ready for that next position.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That is brilliant advice. So, for everyone listening, watching, take notes, write that down, and then go through that list of things to do and pursue because that is absolutely the path to get to where you ultimately want to end up. And then it'll continue to wind and weave as the world continues to change. And that's just part of the journey. I love though that you called out in particular the fact that, you're not starting from the bottom and that there's so many transferable skills. And I think that's what makes change management so interesting. It's not just communications and training. There's analysis, there's investigation, there's negotiation, there's so many components that make it interesting, right? And you're working with humans and we are so complex and irrational at times, right? And so really learning how to develop your leadership skills too. It's just such a, well-rounded, interesting space to play in. And I don't know, I wonder too with so many like knowledge-based jobs getting impacted by some of the advancements in technology. So I think people who continue to adapt, right, change leaders like ourselves, change agents, those who are thinking about this, they may be in a better position to adapt and
Yeah.
transfer their skills into new areas. But also that recognition of the empathy and compassion and human connection piece, right? You mentioned networking because you're genuinely interested in having a conversation with someone. I hate to say that's a skill you should develop. It's really, it has to be authentic, like it is for you. But that's the there's power in that and there's potential in that. And so I love everything you've said. You've really painted a beautiful picture of not only why this profession is so engaging to be in, but also a path forward for people who are interested. So thank you, Theo. Anything else you want to share with viewers and listeners before I let you go to your workday?
No, look, I just want to say, thank you so much for having me on. For people who are listening, it's, like I said near the start, it is a continuous journey. If you're not quite there yet, your time will come. And for the people that are in this space, I've already met so many amazing people. Would love to connect with anyone else who's listening. Because for me, it's just about, listening to other people's stories. Like I said, having
Yeah.
that honest, open, and transparent conversation and just learning more. I do all of this for learning. And that's exactly how I've come to, meet someone like yourself, be on a podcast
Yeah.
like this. And hopefully I can continue to do that with other people that I connect with as well.
Wonderful. And what is the best way to connect with you? Is it on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
And if so, what is I mean, what's your handle, I guess is the is it
Yeah.
at
Good
Theodore
question.
D'Souza?
I think it's Theodore D'Souza. I'm pretty sure that's what my handle is.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to, wherever possible, share it in however this podcast comes out. Or, I'm sure people can find me through my bright orange branding and face and looking my
Yeah.
name up through LinkedIn. And yeah, that's kind of the main way to connect with me.
Very cool. Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you again for your time. And yeah, I just really enjoyed our conversation today. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me.